All right. Looks like for many folks, looks like most have joined. So we are recording this webinar and we'll make sure that we have this available for you all to review at a later time if you wish. But first off, hello everyone and welcome to today's session. I'd like to thank everyone who was able to join us and listen in on today's conversation. We have a fantastic panel for us with us this afternoon. And today we'll be discussing fundraising and development on the Salesforce platform. And we'll hear from Catholic Charities and really understand from them how they were able to improve the donor experience and streamline the way they manage data. To help us highlight this topic, we're fortunate to be joined by a few folks from Salesforce.org and Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities has been a great partner to both Redpath and Salesforce, and we're very much excited to hear their story of digital transformation and learn why digital maturity is so important in today's world. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we did reserve some time to ask questions and answer questions at the end, so feel free to chat them and we'll do our best to get to them. And if not, happy to provide a written response or even a verbal response sort of after the webinar. Again, for those of you joining us, welcome. During the next 45 minutes or so, we hope to accomplish really the following objectives: the value of becoming donor-centric, the plans, processes, and technologies you need to provide a superior digital experience in fundraising. We'll learn how Catholic Charities improved relationships with their donors and streamlined donation management with Salesforce. And finally, we'll get an understanding of how Salesforce helped Catholic Charities really exceed their fundraising goal. Now we'll introduce today's speakers. My name is Eric Gunderson, and I lead sales and account management for our nonprofit practice here at Redpath. In my role, I help organizations simplify process and accelerate their mission with the power of Salesforce. And today, I'll be moderating the discussion and be the primary question asker, if you will. And joining us from Salesforce is Valerie Brown. Valerie is a leader in marketing and has 20+ experience in accelerating fundraising and brand engagement for well-known brands and nonprofits, such as Boys and Girls Club of San Francisco and the Yerba Buena Institute Center for the Arts. Today, she serves as a nonprofit industry advisor at Salesforce.org and has dedicated her career to supporting nonprofits in technology capacity building. Valerie, welcome. Thank you. We are also joined by Sarah Harrison from Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis. Sarah is a vital part of Catholic Charities and is the primary product owner of their Salesforce environment. She spent most of her professional career in the nonprofit sector and is experienced in process definition and database management. And from a personal perspective, the project was pivotal with Sarah's involvement. She was a huge part of the project and a huge part in the success of the implementation. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. And rounding out our panel this afternoon is Haley Mueller. And some of you joining today may know her personally because really in my eyes, she's incredibly well known and very well networked, and I think for good reason. Today, she serves as the Vice President of Development at Catholic Charities and is a member of their executive team. Haley has developed a robust and comprehensive development program and oversees a team that is responsible for more than $10 million in revenue annually. She's an experienced fundraising professional, and we're so fortunate to have Haley on her, so fortunate to have Haley and her team really as part of the Redpath family. So Haley and other panelists, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we begin, just wanted to share a brief bit about Redpath for those of you who may be joining us for the very first time. We are a Salesforce consulting and implementation firm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We've been a Salesforce partner since 2008 and serve nonprofit organizations nationwide, having completed over 950 projects across the commercial and nonprofit sectors. We have a passion for mission-driven organizations and are dedicated to solving digital transformation and technology challenges. Nonprofits seek assistance from Redpath when they're exploring a move to Salesforce for the first time or are considering expanding their use of the platform within their organization. We were recently awarded a fastest growing company by Minneapolis-St. Paul's Business Journal and our premier Salesforce consulting partner. So if we can get to the discussion, Valerie, I'd like to start with you. Can you help us frame the state of the nonprofit industry today from a fundraising perspective, and really sort of what are some of the important trends and insights for our fundraisers today, and how can they best focus their efforts to grow their organization?
Yes, thank you so much, Eric, and thank you for gathering us all today. Thank you for having me, and I just want to thank the Redpath team for all the support that it provides to our customers. And to our viewers today, I just want to give you all a shout out and just a big virtual hug. Nonprofits are the lifeblood of our communities. Organizations like the Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis are providing essential services. So thank you all for what you do, and thank you for being with us today. I have the privilege of serving as the voice of the customer inside Salesforce, and I'm someone that can speak your language. I joined the team 2 months ago as someone who moved my organization to Salesforce during the pandemic, which is questionable, but was very gratifying. And you know, in terms of the state of the industry, we know that nonprofits have been through so much in the past 2 years. Before the pandemic, we were already facing challenges, right? So after losing net income, after having to make shifts to programs, losing staff, we're now in a moment of recovery, and we're seeing fundraising come back on a number of different levels. But the studies and the reports in the market show that we're not maximizing this effort. And essentially, there are 2 studies that really stand out for me. They demonstrate that donors are expecting more from nonprofits right now. The 2 insights that stand out for me, the first is a 2021 global research study looking at 630 different organizations in 9 countries that showed that nearly half of emails that are being distributed do not mention the donor by name. So this is a number that has been a challenge for us for so long. I was actually very surprised to see that this number hasn't moved the dial in 2021. Another report that I really recommend, which is called the 2021 Nonprofit Leadership Impact Study, shows that the #1 challenge right now that nonprofits are facing is acquiring donors. And that is shortly followed by ineffectiveness in digital fundraising. So this challenge is still with us. Having just walked through this process for my organization, the cause is that we're still in this world of disconnected systems. Our platforms are not flexible, they're not integrating and meeting the needs of teams across the organization. And our data is not telling a complete story. So in terms of focusing, I think right now, we've got to get our data cleaned up. We've got to find flexible systems and be leveraging technology that allows all of our teams to work together to personalize and to automate content. Donors have had enough of generic requests. That's the headline. And it's time for us to move this work forward.
Thank you. Can you give us a high-level overview of what Salesforce.org is and the core solutions that you have to offer in addressing some of these challenges?
Absolutely. So Salesforce.org is a team at Salesforce focused on building technology for a community of nonprofits. We're 52,000 strong right now. And the way to really think about this as a CMO, as a marketer at a nonprofit, I spent so much time thinking about the competition, Netflix, TikTok, gaming. My husband's a gamer. I cannot get him to look at my emails, right, from my nonprofit. Like, how do we compete? So the 3 things that I was looking at as someone responsible for making this decision in my organization was that it had to be easy to use. If we think about the core issue here, it's adoption. And this was the game changer for me, seeing Salesforce, easy user experience. This was key. That second piece is flexibility. And there are so many fundraising tools out there today. The core value proposition I feel for Salesforce is flexibility. The fact that it is adaptable and can integrate with a number of different tools that we all need to run our nonprofit organizations. And third, what you're really going to get is innovation. This organization is focused on investing in research and development. So this slide, and the reason why I chose this slide is because this was my dream, to have, just close your eyes and think about everyone on a connected system, programs. It's so difficult to get out of Excel spreadsheets, right? Fundraising, marketing and engagement, having the fundraising tools, having the grants management tool, all integrated. This was my dream. And this is what you get when you look at our core platform, which is Nonprofit Cloud. This is the core integrated system that you should start with. And if you go to salesforce.org and look at Nonprofit Cloud, you'll see a set of solutions that we're offering. We need our CRMs to be connected to the fundraising experience. So Salesforce is going to give you access to something like Elevate. You can build your donation pages. You can run fundraising programs through that in a mobile-friendly experience. But you also get access to something called an app exchange. As a nonprofit organization that had a performing arts component, we needed ticketing. We can go through the app exchange, connect to a platform that allows us to do that. Peer fundraising, right? Instead of signing a license with another platform, you can go right into an area, integrate with a peer-to-peer fundraising tool, and you're moving your organization forward by having flexibility and adaptability. Just think about your iPhone and your Android phone without the App Store, right? You want to have options. You don't want to be limited in this work. So these are the core elements of the platform. And you can go to that last slide. You know, I'm so passionate about this work. We need tools that are easy for our teams to understand. We need them to be forward-looking. We have to future-proof our organizations, right? So, you know, as we listen to Sarah and Haley today, and I'm so excited to hear about the work that they've done and how that set them apart as leaders in this field, just think about the frustrations and the challenges that you might be facing. And if you're curious, reach out to the team at Redpath. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. But the Nonprofit Cloud is really a great place to start to think about how we can integrate all of these needs for our organization. So I hope that you're curious, and I'm so excited to hear about the work that Sarah and Haley has done today.
Great. Thank you so much, Valerie. And I know, you know, a big part of the Salesforce Ohana are trailblazers, right? Those individuals who are sort of braving the way for the very first time for many other individuals. And I think just personally, as I think about the panelists today and Sarah's work with the implementation, I think becoming sort of a very routine and very comfortable sort of Blackbaud suite user and migrating to Salesforce for the very first time. Sarah, as I'm thinking about this, I certainly think that you're deserving of a Trailblazer hoodie. So this wasn't
I'm sending
planned.
it to you if you don't have it. I'm sending it to you.
I certainly think that we need to get something like that in order. So Sarah, thank you again for the great work and really sort of leaning into this entire project and being such a great role model for really everybody at Catholic Charities and a lot of other folks interested in making a migration.
That's right. Thanks,
so,
Sarah.
Kind of starting the questions to Catholic Charities, you know, really, I think giving the audience an overview of, you know, who you serve from a fundraising and from a donor perspective. Maybe Haley, if you want to take this one and really sort of tell the audience sort of who are your donors and what do they mean to Catholic Charities?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having us today. It's just a pleasure to be here. And Valerie, so good to be on this webinar with you as well. So who are Catholic Charities donors? We have, over the course of a fiscal year, anywhere between 14 and 16,000 donors. And that includes individuals, corporations, foundations, and other types of funders to Catholic Charities. We rely heavily on private philanthropy. It is a very, very large piece of our overall budget. And as Eric said at the beginning, we raised well over $10 million last year. We raised a little north of 14 million just in annual operating support. So we operate from donors who give us $1 all the way up to donors who are giving us 6 and 7 figures a year for big projects and capital expenses. And then, of course, we do a lot of work with planned giving as well. And so we run that gamut, and it's everywhere in between. Our donors tend to be on the older side of the spectrum, which is another really critical reason why we decided to make this shift. We needed to be able to reach our donors where they are, bring new people into the fold, have an interface that works really well for us, and that works really well with the community at large. So it was really critical that we find a platform that could accomplish those things. Our donors are incredibly generous. They are incredibly loyal above all else, which is, we are very lucky to have that loyalty. And they're very flexible with us, and they believe in the work that we do, which is serving those most in need in our community here in St. Paul and Minneapolis, really the most vulnerable in our community. So the mission tugs at people's heartstrings, and the need is unfortunately great and growing. So this is a very passionate group of donors as well.
Yeah, I read a study, I think in the last 3 years, Haley, that impact donations have nearly doubled in the last 3 years. And so I think really being able to capture that message and share it with donors and sort of tap into their passions and interests is a great way to build philanthropic and involvement and investment within the community. So if you all could maybe walk us through sort of the state of Catholic Charities pre-implementation. Some things to think about would be, what were some of your largest operating barriers, and how does your team identify them, and how were your donors and your constituents impacted?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks to the other panelists also for being on here. That's very generous. Very pumped for the sweatshirt. That is a day maker. So thank you. So yeah, this whole project was daunting, but I just have to say at the out front that Redpath made it Haley and I didn't really know what we were doing going in, and we said that to each other frequently, but Redpath continually reminded us that we had the knowledge to get through, and they were right. So I think if you take the 1,000-foot view, a lot of our issues stemmed from the data structure of Razor's Edge, which is what we were operating in, really made it the case that everything had to live with one person, which was the database manager. No one was really responsible outside of the development operations team for the integrity of the database, and especially the database manager role. And I think because of this, there was no real movement or improvements that could be made to the system. There wasn't a lot of excitement, and we didn't see the database as a team member, which is what I was hoping to work towards. And we'll get to that more later. It was kind of like we were walking through, for an analogy, we were walking through the woods and there was maybe a path or two that we could choose from, but that was it. And so when that's the case, there's not a lot of curiosity, there's just not a lot of creativity. And so it's maybe a little bit more of a philosophical answer for you, but, and I would say that we didn't really know that was the case until we started down this journey, because you don't know what you don't know. But as we went through the RFP process and kind of started looking at other operating systems, because we knew what we were doing wasn't working, and we knew it wasn't going to work long term for us. We were looking for a platform that had flexible reporting. Our gift entry was taking a really long time for various reasons. Using Online Express was our online giving tool, and just a lot of duplicates were made through that process. All the things that Valerie honestly was talking about, we wanted to solve for. I was like resold on Salesforce as you were talking, Valerie, because it was just like, yes, I remember going to I call it the BS days, the before Salesforce days, and just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go back. So, and fundamentally right now, you're still operating, we were operating on 2 different platforms, NXT, and we had to use Razor's Edge 7 for our gift entry and all of the heavy lifting. We had to still utilize Crystal reports for our annual summaries. Like, that is just not something a nonprofit, especially of our size, needs to be doing. I'm kind of rattling off some random examples here, but our list polls, we do a robust direct mail program, and pulling the list and actually just exporting that data took a full day and a person's entire time. So we were really looking for things to just solve those. They sound like little annoyances, like an export takes a long time or you have to use Crystal reports. But I think at the end of the day, time builds up, and time is money in this field. And I also think for the people like myself who are working in the database, there's something to be said for working in a system that is exciting versus stagnant and dull. And so when you're thinking about your employees' experience, like, that is also not nothing. And then just kind of a last analogy that you asking these questions has made me think about our database before Salesforce was kind of a box that we dumped stuff in. And one person knew where everything is, one person. But if they were out or if they were busy, we couldn't get everything. Whereas in Salesforce, it's kind of like a scrapbook where everything's still there, but everyone can view their own page as they want to, and it just tells a more robust story. So hopefully that wasn't too rambly, but Haley, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you nailed it. We were in a tool that was not working for us anymore. And we knew that in order for us to grow as an organization, for us to retain our staff, to retain our donors, we needed to move to something that was going to be a long-term solution. And Salesforce rose to the top really quickly for us.
That's great. Thank you both for that. As I'm thinking about, you're already starting to kind of transition into sort of what were some of the benefits that you received, but I'm curious if we can take a step back for a minute and sort of look broadly overarching at the organizational goals that Catholic Charities had. Sort of how did they guide and complement your objectives for this project? Because I think it's important to align your organization and the direction and the vision that you all have for the organization with the direction and the vision that you have for technology. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more on that.
I think you hear this probably at every nonprofit, and it holds true for Catholic Charities. We are siloed, right? We always are siloed in our roles, and we always have to draw ourselves back to the mission if you're not truly on the front lines doing that work. And that was true here. And it was true. We have their development work that has data within the database, but we also do have all of our volunteer data, and then a core group of folks called advocates, and there's crossover between the three. But there are teams associated with those user groups. And so we wanted a way to really empower everyone to be in the same system. And so, yeah, I think that was an overarching goal. And I said this before, but you don't know what you don't know. So I think the goals also evolved as we learned more about the system, which, yeah, kind of took shape as we kind of took that leap of faith. Yeah, Haley, anything to add there?
I would just add that, an overarching goal for Catholic Charities, and one of the things that we've really prided ourselves on for a long time, is really being very donor-centric, being very thoughtful about how we interact with our donors, and how we reflect the community around us. And so that was an overarching piece of this conversation too, is how can we make sure that we are treating our donors with the utmost respect and courtesy, and making sure that they get what they need. And also that we're doing the same for ourselves. I was very clear from the beginning. I'm not really interested in a system where we are building workarounds. We should build a system that works for us. And that's one of the beauties of Salesforce, is that it is so customizable. We never met with Redpath and had them say, well, we can't really do that. I mean, that was never really an option. And that was super empowering, and I think really helped people who had formerly been at arm's length from the database. They might have been a gift officer user, but we're not really in the data and understanding how it works. It gave them license to say, well, what would make my job easier is if I could see X, Y, and Z. Can we do that? And that's been incredibly powerful experience. And for me, my role in this project, because I am not a database person, was chief cheerleader. I mean, that's really the role that I took on, was sort of carrying the banner of Salesforce to my team, and helping people to see the power in the product, and that it really did align with our values as an organization. So and bring people along, even the stragglers who really liked Salesforce or Razor's Edge. We had a few people who really wanted to hang on. So
yeah, and I think with that ownership piece, like wanting everyone to feel like an owner of the database, and certainly things still have to go through me. Like I do like a little bit of control still, but I also don't know what a gift officer needs. I don't know what the volunteer department needs. I needed them to come to me with ideas, and that just wasn't happening in the old system. Whereas here, because of Redpath showing us that anything was happening, and then the underlying data structure of Salesforce makes it the case that really the sky's the limit. And so there were specific things we were looking to accomplish, but I think we get to that later, forecasting and stuff.
Yeah, and I think you all had already started to sort of touch on some of the strategies and some of the best practices that you utilize to really sort of bring people along and encourage them to really buy into Salesforce and know that there's always a with them, right? I mean, I know when change is done to me rather than when it is done with me. I know how I react between the two, and I think that it goes without saying for many folks on today's discussion. So if we can just sort of touch on some of the strategies that you all employed to get buy-in with your team. And I know that there are some screenshots as well that I would guess that many of the attendees are sort of anxious or interested to see. So we'll do our best to get to those with the time that we have left.
Sure. I mean, Redpath kind of sets this up with how you all handle the implementation, but we did a lot of listening sessions. I'd say we probably had 30 people end up easily on at least one listening session. And they allowed us to be truly honest. And sometimes that's a little bit of organizational friction that you might have, because every org has that. And it allowed us to work that out in a way and use this implementation to come up with a new way to think about our work. And everyone felt heard. And again, we were never told, no, that's not possible. Now, the caveat always being, and I'd say Haley and I were told by at least 2 people, you're going to regret your move to Salesforce. You can't do it. And of course, that's scary to hear as you're like, well, we're doing this. It takes time, and it won't be the shining beacon that is possible, but that's there, and you will work towards it, and it is achievable. So I think Haley and I were really big into the dream big and then ground in reality, saying, this is all possible and we're going to get there. We're going to start one step at a time. And Redpath was critical at building that foundation for us, so that now 7 months in, I'm able to, certainly there are things we still want to accomplish, but I feel like they're achievable as opposed to not even thinking about them because it's too daunting or it's not possible. And then I'd say Haley was the driver of the, because she is our executive leader, of the kind of get on the bus mentality, like we're doing this. But I think when you hear that from your leadership, you kind of don't have a choice, and that's freeing, because you don't have to worry about, I mean, you're being told like we're doing this, and that is, I think that there's power in that for the employee to be like, okay, I guess I got to do this. And then I did some self-coaching to myself on the harder days of the implementation, but this is a professional experience that you get to add to your wheelhouse, and you learn a lot, and it's a resume builder. It's all of the things, and you're building a skill set. And so I think don't discredit that as a way to get buy-in. Any other tidbits, Haley? Make it fun. You can share some of your ideas to make it fun.
We definitely did make it fun, and I know we're running tight on time, but I'm happy to share offline how we made it fun. Let's just say we used Trailhead, and we had contests, and there was candy, and it was really fun, and I think it brought people along. So I'm happy to share that.
And I will say too, I think Redpath's team come from the ones we worked with, especially have experience in nonprofits, so you feel like you're talking to your people the entire time, and so they get it, and so you don't really have to. They're not selling it to you; they're just explaining the life that you know. And they're like, "There's a different way. There's a different way out there," and you're like, "Really? Okay." And so that alone kind of just was a lovely experience.
Thank you for the compliment there, Sarah. We appreciate it. I think too, as maybe part of a follow-up, and I didn't think about it, I probably should have, but Haley, I think, with the help of her team to some extent, I think drafted a absolutely fantastic poem that she sent to everyone, including the Redpath team, in preparation for Go Live. And I think, Haley, with your permission, I'd like to include that, an image of it, with our follow-up. So you all can see that.
Yep, share away. It was quite fun.
Perfect. So as we think about sort of, post implementation and post go live, you all are off and running, the team is happy, data is better managed, you are able to connect with your donors and your constituents on a deeper level than you were before. Think about some of the things that maybe weren't big when you were in the implementation, or think about things that you really sort of started to love after the implementation that maybe you didn't think of during the project. And with that, what are some of the features and the functionality that have really become cornerstones for you all in your day-to-day work?
Yes. Yeah, this one is hard to answer because it's like everything I like better. Just the inherent platform of Salesforce is so much more enjoyable. But yeah, I think this one was less of a cornerstone, but I'll speak to these points is that, like I said prior, the database lived with the database manager. But now it really feels like a collective ours. I think we've really empowered everyone. And to use the analogy of the woods, the multiple paths through the woods, I feel like now we can climb trees, we can build a swing, we can do all of that. But in terms of the cornerstones of kind of what we rely on now, I do have the screenshots that I think will speak to some of this, but the volunteer data, one of those, if you want to go to that next one.
Sure.
Right. So I think like dashboards generically across the board allow us to view our data. I mean, we're all visual learners, I think, in a way, and this allows us to really see our volunteers. And so there on the top left, you've got how many of your volunteers, how many of your folks within various portfolios are volunteering in the last month. And so then this would allow either a gift officer to reach out to that group of their donors and do a specific communication with them about that, or generally a campaign with everyone that volunteered in the last month and really tailor it to whatever the gift officer of choice wants to do. And then there on the right, you've got by company, how many people are volunteers. And so then again, there's just a million different strategies you can take with the way that we've lined this data out. And again, it's not that this was necessarily unpullable from a Razor's Edge or an NXT, but we weren't pulling it. So it doesn't matter if something was technically capable. If you weren't doing it, then you weren't doing it and you weren't communicating with people in that way. So yeah, just the dashboard functionality, I think because NXT technically has dashboards, I was a little worried like, oh, is this gonna be that different from Razor's Edge? Are we really gonna use it differently? And I've already built, I don't know, like 20 dashboards or more, and people are building their own dashboards. So yeah, I think that's one where I had a little bit of anxiety through the implementation process of, is this going to be that much better? And it really has elevated our work. Sorry, I finally got back to your question there.
That's all right, Sarah. And I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to go to the next slide where there's just a few more dashboards, and I would just sort of speak to them high level. And what I would say too is dashboards are extraordinarily important for individuals who might not be in the solution on a day-to-day basis. So take the use of maybe an executive member on the organization where they're managing a team and they want to see sort of an aggregate. how the team is doing, how the quarter is looking from a fundraising perspective, and so on and so forth, all the way down to the individual users like the Eric Gundersons of Catholic Charities, where I need to be able to sort of manage my day-to-day and manage the folks who I'm working with. So I think to your point about sort of being able to create and manipulate your own reports and dashboards sort of at will is very valuable to me as an individual user of Salesforce.
Yes, and this dashboard is an example of Emily Wade is one of our gift officers, and she came up with the idea for this, a way to manage our pipeline. And so now we didn't have a way to visually manage our pipeline. We talked about it ad nauseum, but now we have visuals, which allows us to have a process and actually see where people are and moving, and it's just all connected and lovely. So this is just an example of, this was implemented in August, and it's off and running and going really well. And then obviously the managers can check in on it and say, okay, I see where X, Y, and Z is. So yeah, this is an example of someone having a creative idea and bringing it to us, and we just built it for them. It wasn't my idea, it was their idea, because they know how to manage their work.
Sure.
And then this would be the forecast, which in the previous Razor's Edge, the forecast took a data poll. It wasn't very accurate. Only one person could do it. And we could only do it then once a month or bi-monthly because of that. Now, Haley can check it whenever she wants. You can subscribe to it. It's live data. It's just, this alone made it worth the transition, this forecast, how we see how close we are to goal.
That's great. And Haley, it looks like you're in second place there, which is probably a good thing.
Am I only in second place? Well, yeah, that's probably fair. My portfolio is pretty small.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I know, Sarah, you included a couple different different sort of screenshots of the forms that are available to folks who might be interested.
Yeah, this one I'm just really excited we got in before I went on maternity leave. This is our gift in kind form. We get a lot of gift in kinds, very generous donors. And we have a whole warehouse that holds them. And before, the process for entering the gift in kinds had manual paper being brought back and forth from the warehouse, and we had to keep it. And sometimes people's signatures weren't, it was just horrible. And Redpath helped us build an online form that donors can fill out, or we do it for them. They get an immediate emailed receipt, and then the gift just goes into the database. So we're not even having to do the data entry. I mean, this is time savings. It's a better experience for the donor. It's just all around a great experience. So this is just another, I didn't know going in like, oh, we're going to improve our gift in kind process. So, but then you start kind of unlearning the ways of Razor's Edge, and everything else opens up. This is our, and I know we're running up on time. We want to save some time for questions, but our daily gift report, this used to have to be pulled out of the database into an Excel spreadsheet. One person knew how to do this, and then it relied on them emailing it out to the team, and sometimes she would forget. Now it is a report that people can access whenever they want. It's live data. They can also immediately see if there was a gift entry error. Hey, this person should have been soft credited or what have you, and we get to fix it immediately right there. This, again, game changer for how we operate.
Fantastic. And your implementation was so strategic across your entire organization. We could probably share screenshot for screenshot and demo after demo all day. No, that's all right. There's a lot. It's very robust, and it's good. So being sure to leave at least a few minutes for questions. And again, to the attendees, we are happy to provide written responses or verbal responses if we're not able to get to everyone, but we'll be sure to make sure that your questions are resolved and get them to the right person. So maybe in a few words, Haley and or Sarah, what advice would you give to other organizations who are thinking about taking similar steps with their technology investment?
I can respond by saying, I think having leadership that's really invested in the transition is huge. Somebody who's going to really keep the ball moving forward. I also think finding a partner that you can trust and who's going to challenge you I can't tell you how many times Sarah would bring me in on a call with Andrea, one of the consultants at Redpath, who would say, you know, you really don't need to bring over 350,000 meeting note records. Like, why do you need that? And really challenging us to say, you know what, we don't. And making our lives that much easier, making the data that much more clear and easy to use. So I would say that leadership, and then having a partner that challenges you and asks those hard questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do go back to when you enter into this process, the dream big, ground in reality, I think is really important to set expectations that it's going to be bumpy. Of course it is. But the goal is to have a smooth operating system at the end, and that it's possible. And to lean on Redpath, because again, the people that you'll be working with have done this work. They've done the nonprofit side of the work, and so they're not coming in telling you what to do like they've never done it themselves. And so really leaning into that fact.
Thank you both, and thank you, Valerie, for participating in today's conversation. I thought it was very healthy, and I think very insightful for a lot of folks. We've left precisely 2 minutes for questions. If someone would like to, chat a question that we could quickly answer, I think we'd be more than happy to try to get to it. Otherwise, I think there's a few questions that we could get to retroactively. So question to Redpath from Carol: how responsive is Salesforce to implementing the views and reporting needs of nonprofits? And that may be a question for Valerie, or even in the perspective of Catholic Charities, if you would like to answer. So the question is, how responsive is Salesforce to implementing the views and reporting needs of nonprofits?
I'll just quickly say there hasn't been a thing I haven't been able to do. Like, there isn't a report that you can't make, which is such a adjustment, but it's really, I'll let Valerie though speak to Salesforce.
No, that's exactly right, Sarah. And that's why flexibility was so critical to me when I was making this decision. You know, I carried it so strongly, the responsibility of who are we going to pick? It had to make me look better in my organization, and it couldn't have limits, right? Because we were also dealing with the pandemic, and we really needed something that could allow us to modify and change a membership program, different volunteer programs that we had implemented. So I would say the answer to that question is yes. It is responsive and very flexible, and we're happy to dig in more and talk more about the specifics of what you're looking to achieve.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you both for contributing to that response. Attendees and those joining us, thank you again so much for your time, and a special thank you to Catholic Charities, Haley and Sarah. Really appreciate your selflessness and willing to come in and share with the broader audience your experience migrating to Salesforce and how it really has impacted your organization for the better. So thank you again, and Valerie, special thank you to you as well for joining, representing for Salesforce. Again, recording will be available, and I will make sure to be available for any questions and so on, and we can absolutely make sure that anything that you have, questions, thoughts, otherwise, are answered. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.